Hi, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I just want to present one very good topic in front of you. It is very interesting. It is called the intradural intramedullary mass, and it is a 45-year-old male presented with the normo non-radiating diffuse midline cervicothoracic pain, and that is progressed over 6 month period, and he recently developed the numbness and weakness in the bilateral dural upper extremity and primarily his hand. He further reports several episodes of the urinary incontinence and a sense of incomplete evacuation and bowel movement. Otherwise, it is unremarkable, but I want to mention here the no tenderness or the muscle spasm or to palpation for the cervicothoracic spine. And the upper extremity exam shows the 4/5 weakness in the hand grip, bilateral 4+/5 wrist flexion and extensor, and the diffuse sensory dysesthesia. And both lower limbs shows power 4/5 weakness diffusely in both lower limbs, and decreased pain and temperature sensation with the sensory level at T4, thoracic 4, and reflex +3 to the lower limbs. And we can see the two beats of clonus, positive Hoffman sign, and bilaterally, and normal rectal tone. On differential diagnosis, definitely there is a lesion in the cervicothoracic area, and definitely cervical disc maybe, or upper thoracic disc, or cervical spondylosis, or upper thoracic spondylosis, or neoplastic, for example, intradural intramedullary spinal cord tumor, maybe the astrocytoma or ependymoma. If we consider the intradural extramedullary spinal cord tumor, then the meningioma or schwannoma or neurofibroma. If we consider then the extradural spinal cord tumor compression, maybe the primary bone tumor or the epidural lymphoma, or the metastatic spinal cord tumors, or the vascular involvement, maybe the spinal AVM or spinal dural fistula, or infectious, we can tuberculoma or epidural abscess, or we can say there may be the multiple sclerosis or transverse myelitis, or we can say there is a vitamin B12 deficiency here. So, and we did the CT scan and MRI for this patient, and there is in the MRI shows there is a cervical upper thoracic contrast enhanced sagittal, and the axial MRI of the intradural intramedullary oblong lesion extend from the inferior border of the C7 to T3, expanding the spinal cord, and the lesion reveal homogeneous enhancement with no dural tail. Differential diagnosis like the ependymoma, less likely astrocytoma or extramedullary tumor, and the further workup done for that routine lab, CBC, PTA, BTT, INR, LFT, KET, and electrolyte. And the CSF, if the canal is not obstructed by the expanded cord, and then there is a suspicion of the infection or inflammation, then imaging maybe CT cervicothoracic spine for better evacuation of the bony anatomy, and the X-ray cervical spine with the flexion extension to evaluate for the dynamic instability, and MRI brain to exclude the intracranial ependymoma or demyelinating disease, and the MRI pen spine to rule out further disease. Actually, the CT chest, abdomen, and the pelvis to rule out the metastasis or the tumor associated with the von Hippel-Lindau disease. And regarding the pathology or pathophysiology, I want to tell you here the primary spinal cord or the spinal cord tumor account of the 5% to 10%, and the adult spinal tumors uh, are 4 to 5% of the primary central nervous system tumors. So they are classified by their anatomical sublocation, and it is the intradural, intramedullary, intradural, extramedullary, or extradural, or intradural, intramedullary spinal cord tumors. So constitute the 20 to 30% of the all primary spinal cord tumors, and approximately we can say the 90% of the intramedullary tumors are ependymoma and or the astrocytoma. So out of this 90%, the 60% are ependymoma and 30% are astrocytoma. So ependymoma are double than the astrocytoma, and the remaining 10% include the, you can say, hemangioblastoma, especially in the von Hippel-Lindau disease, and often have associated maybe syrinx or the cavernomas or metastasis. So the ependymoma is the most common intradural intramedullary tumor type in adult, and the peak incidence in the fourth decade, and with male being more commonly affected than the females. So this is the somehow detail, but I want to tell you little more detail about this intradural intramedullary tumors. The most common symptoms are non-specific axial pain, followed by slowly progressive neurological decline, and urogenital or the anorectal dysfunction occur early. Rare case of acute neurological compromise from the tumor hemorrhage have been reported. So the myxopapillary ependymoma, WHO grade 1, is distinct type and predominantly extramedullary and located in the lumbar system. This exopapillary ependymoma, which is WHO grade 1, and they are located into the phylum terminale, and they definitely sometimes behave like or seem like the extramedullary intradural tumor. And so the cellular ependymomas arise from the ependymal lining of the central canal and are classified into the WHO grade 2 tumor, and the anaplastic ependymomas are rare and are classified as a WHO grade 3 tumors, and the histologically ependymoma cells are categorized by round to oval nuclei and contain we can say finally disposed chromatin with the perivascular or ependymal rosette. The most common location of ependyma is the cervical spine and followed by the cervicothoracic and thoracic spine. Treatment option, there is a microsurgery, and the most important factor influencing the surgical objective is the nature of the tumor and the spinal cord interface. So the microsurgery is definitely a very, very important element for this kind of tumor, especially the most important tumor influencing surgical objective is the nature of the tumor and the spinal cord interface. So the benign tumors such as the ependymoma or the hemangioblastomas, although unencapsulated, are non-infiltrative lesions that typically exhibit a distinct tumoral spinal cord interface, and the gross total removal is the treatment of choice. So the astrocytomas rarely exhibit is a definitive dissection plan, and gross total resection may be achieved at some cases, but the extent of removal is uncertain and poorly defined in most cases, and the biopsy rather than resection of the spinal GBM may be prudent. Radiotherapy is the mainstay treatment in the high-grade glioma case, and it also be administered for the recurrent or the residual tumors which is the evidence of the progression when the surgical resection is not possible. Side effects include the spinal cord edema, radiation, myelopathy, spiral kyphosis or subluxation, and delayed radiation necrosis. Chemotherapy such as the high-grade astrocytoma are treated with concomitant radiation and chemotherapy and post-radiotherapy temozolomide. So the surgical technique here, the patient is placed prone on a operative table and the May field is used for the cervical and the upper thoracic lesion above at T6 level. And this neuromonitoring is utilized include the motor evoked potential and the somatosensory evoked potential and the electromyogram are not uncommonly lost following midline myelotomy and are of a minimal use in the surgical resection of intramedullary spinal cord tumor. And apart from this case, I did one case of a child which is the 9-year-old and he has a about 9 to 10 centimeter long ependymoma intramedullary, and it took 9 hours to perform that surgery. Microscopically we try to remove as much as possible and we find a decent result after rehabilitation and ICU admission of this patient. So thank God he recovered with the time, definitely with the span of time. And I just want to mention here this patient, this is adult patient, and I deliberately kept here adult patient rather than that child because the response of her, recovery response of her was more pronounced or more or rapid than the child one. So the patient is placed, as I mentioned, in the prone position. Mayfield is used for the cervical and the upper thoracic lesion above the T6 level especially, and the neuromonitoring is utilized include the motor evoked potential, somatosensory evoked potential, EMG are not unlikely lost midline myelotomy and are of minimal use in surgical resection of intramedullary spinal cord tumor. But fluoroscopy is used for the localization and ultrasonography is useful for the tumor localization and the issue of assurance of the adequate bony exposure. A midline skin lesion is made followed by the subperitoneal or subperiosteal bony dissection, and the standard laminectomy is performed, and this should extend to at least one significant above and one significant below, and the solid tumor component and the preservation of the facet joint were possible, so the meticulous hemostasis is necessary before dural opening. Here, as I mentioned, when we are making the incision, so subperiosteal bony dissection and then standard laminectomy is performed, but should be extended at least one segment above and below. It is mandatory because it is very much helpful when you are operating such kind of tumors. So if you have some experience, definitely you know that when you are level above, level below, then you have exposure is very good, and you will find least in a we can say there is a retraction, and if you can avoid the retraction here, I think the win-win situation for you. So the dura is opened, or before that I just want to mention there they should I want to extend at least one above and one below, and then the preservation of the facet joint where possible, but not mandatory, because you will take the consent for the stabilization also. Okay, you can stabilize, But the meticulous hemostasis is necessary before the dural opening. As I mentioned that the bleeding inside the spinal cord cause the meningism and erythrodenitis, and it will unnecessary and a complication. You can avoid this with the help of a good suction. Your colleague, your assistant, who is assisting you, or some colleague is equal work with you, then you take the responsibility who will suck the blood, and avoid to spillage of blood, because the chemical when you blood will come, when you remove that, you will find there's a chemical reaction, it causes the meningium, and you will find difficulty post-operative after doing that kind of a tedious surgery, and it will unfruitful for you. This is a very small thing if you can avoid it. The dura is opened at the midline under the microscope or magnification of the microscope or loops. I am using loop more. I am not comfortable with the microscope too gaudy, and it is not my kind. I am using the word microscope, but I am using the loops. But standard is microscope. So here I want to tell you that the arachnoid is opened separately, and spinal cord is inspected for the surface abnormality and the tumor. For example, you bulge, or you can see there is a spinal cord usually, or you can use the ultrasound if you have the expertise over that, and you can see where the most enlarged swollen area, tense area. You can give the we can say the and choose the an area of entry is the least vascular area, where the less vascular area, from that you should make an entry. And the exposure of the most intramedullary neoplasm is typically performed via dorsal midline, we can say the myelotomy, and some author prefer to the part of the dorsal column using the for the micro scissors and the micro dissectors, and that we can say the especially it is made for that tumors, and you can expose the paramedian myelotomy sometime, and that extend to the longitudinally, and from one side where the more weakness you can so you can avoid the midline. Some people are midline, some people are paramidline, upon your choice. I am using if there is a one area more weak, then I am using the paramedian of that weakest area, and if there is no such kind of weakness, and then I am using the midline. So, but paramedian is best. If you have find one bulge more overside the paramedian, in my opinion, best. But you can use upon your will and wish. Exposure of the most intramedullary neoplasm is typically performed via dorsal midline myelotomy, and some authors prefer to the for example dorsal column using the micro dissectors and micro scissors, which are especially made for this, and some using the paramedian myelotomy that extend longitudinally from both ends and may viable or for any visible tumor site or extruding tumor. And the use of the PL suture and improve the surgical exposure, and reduce the, we can say, the severity or the repair tumor during the dissection. So here, and I want to some pictures which is in the book, but it is because more knowledgeable. You can appreciate in the picture A, you can see there how the durotomy done. Then in picture B, you can see where the entry point found, where the least vascular area. And in picture C, you can see the how dissection intramedullary when you are going longitudinally inside, and picture D also showing how the removal of tumor is happening. So in both pictures you can appreciate, and it give you lot of idea. I deliberately took the with this, for the analogy of my case, I took this picture from the book, because I found there is a more informative, more clean, more neat to understand for the listeners. Actually, the technique of tumor removal depend upon the presence of the clean plane of the spinal cord and its size. Development of the tumor spinal cord interface is preferred for the circumscribed tumor with a well-defined plane, especially in ependymoma, because I have more experience to remove the ependymoma, and I operated more than 6-7 cases for ependymoma. That's why I can only share the ependymoma experience, because all of the patients which I operate, the histology came with the ependymoma grade 2 tumors, WHO grade 2 tumors. That's why I want to only explain these kind of things. But definitely you can experience, with your experience you can understand more. But it is the paramount importance that there is an absence of the plane or dissection is an infiltrating tumor. Then the surgical resection is limited to the area of absolute gross pathology to avoid injury to the adjacent neural tissue. So we have to left some tumor, and and twice I did like that. I have to leave the tumor, but not to give more damage to the neural already tumor did. If you done more, then definitely it will be the very, very difficult for the family and the patient. Larger tumor require the internal decompression to allow better visualization and the mobilization of the lateral and the ventral tumor margin. And the intramural resection is performed from the inside to outside. Don't go from outside to inside. When you go from outside to inside, there's a great chance you can injure the normal nervous tissue. So always come from inside to outside, and it will give you somehow perception or feeling that you are in the abnormal tissue. You are only removing abnormal tissue. You are not removing normal tissue. So the hemangioblastoma should be removed en bloc and not to be debulked like the AVM or the arterial supply should be deprived prior to the venous damage. And the hemostasis followed by the meticulous enclosure is performed to prevent the CSF leakage. So here few pointers I want to give here to understand there the muscle motor evoked potential and the epidural D-wave motor evoked potential should be used in the combination during surgical resection of the intramedullary tumor as long as D-wave amplitude remains 50%. Any post-operative motor deficit are likely to be transient. Care should be taken to avoid facet disruption during exposure to reduce the risk of the post-surgical kyphosis, especially in the young patient with lesion in the cervical and the cervicothoracic spine. So during surgery there is a significant change in the motor evoked potential. Options include the medication to increase the mean arterial pressure and use of the warm saline or papaverine soaked cottons in the resection cavity, and the tumor removal at the different site, or the cessation of the operative procedure and the neurological deficit are common after surgery for the intramedullary lesion, and most deficits are transient and the correlate with the patient preoperative baseline level of the functioning. We can say the dysesthesia and the preoperative difficulty commonly occur secondary to the midline myelotomy, and these deficits generally improve over the first 3 months after surgery with the end of the physical therapy. So actually the neurological deficits are common for the surgery for the intramedullary region, and most deficits are the transit and correlate with the patient preoperative baseline level of functioning dysesthesia and the perioperative difficulties, and commonly occur in secondary to the midline myelotomy. So this deficit generally improve over the first 3 months after the surgery and with the end of the physical therapy. But a few things I want to mention, which maybe I think it is very, very important in my opinion, and which is that there is a acute tumor in the spine comprise about the 15% of the all tumor in the central nervous system, as I mentioned. And these usually are benign and cause symptom primarily through compression of the spinal cord and nerve. And the spinal tumor can classified into three groups based on their location: extradural, intradural, extramedullary, and intramedullary. Extradural tumors are most commonly as they occupy the vertebral body or structure outside the dura, and they are most commonly metastatic. And the intradural extramedullary tumors are the second most common and come from the leptomeninges or the nerve sheath tumors. And these tumors are located inside the dura but external from the spinal cord and exemplified by the meningioma or neurofibroma. The least common 2 to 5% of intramedullary spinal cord tumor, these arise from the spinal cord proper and leading to invasion and destruction of the gray and white matter. But the ependymoma or astrocytoma are the most commonly encountered intramedullary spinal cord tumor and followed by the hemangioblastoma. Other entity include the lipoma, germ cell tumor, ganglioglioma, germinoma, lymphoma, and metastasis. About 80% of intramedullary tumors are glioma, so which can be subdivided into the astrocytoma and ependymoma. And the astrocytoma are more common in children, and while the ependymoma are more often found in the adult, with the astrocytoma peak is third to fourth decade, often low grade, and are found most commonly at the thoracic level. But ependymomas are more commonly found in the lower cord, conus, and phylum, and which is slightly male predominance and peak in the third and the sixth decade. So the hemangioblastoma are the third most common intramedullary spinal cord tumors, and making up to 2 to 15%. And metastatic intramedullary tumors are rare and most frequently develop from the lung and the breast. So the pathophysiology, if we are considered the astrocytoma or the glossy infiltrative tumor with the poorly defined surgical resection plate, and they can often a cavity in the spinal cord and known as a syrinx, and can degenerate into the malignant subtype. But the ependymoma arise from the ependymal cell, are soft, encapsulated, grow slowly, and are more centrally located, appears as a focal enlargement within the spinal cord, and common histological subtype is a WHO grade 2 cellular variant with the perivascular, we can say the pseudo-rosettes. In the phylum terminal micropapillary ependymomas, which I mentioned before, also the WHO grade 1 tumor, and most commonly found and behave like a extramedullary intradural tumors, but they are actually maybe mixed, or the ependymoma can span in the length from the 3 to 4 vertebral body, where the astrocytoma can span to 5 to 6 segment on average Hemangioblastoma are the small tumor and the highly vascularized but rarely extend beyond one or two vertebral bodies. So cyst formation is common and tumor is more often found in men. If we go for the history and the physical exam, the most common presenting symptom with the patient with the intramedullary intradural spinal cord tumor is pain, which is classically worsen at night when the patient is recombinant and can be diffuse or the radicular in nature. And if the dermatomal distribution is unusual for disc herniation, then this intramedullary intradural spinal cord tumor should be suspected, and pain also can be local and causing stiff neck or back and can be described by burning or bilateral. This intramedullary spinal cord tumor can impinge on the motor or the sensory nerve, and the sensory changes such as the paresthesia can be seen, followed by the motor disturbance as the second or the third most common complaint. In children, gait disturbance frequently is seen in addition to the motor weakness, and patient also can have a clumsiness and ataxia, atrophy, muscle twitching, fasciculation, and decreased deep tendon reflex, and loss of bowel and the bladder function can occur at a later stage and can lead to retention, incontinence, or impotence. In children, diagnosis is especially difficult, where the intramedullary spinal cord tumor can remain asymptomatic for a long time, and children can have non-specific complaint and their symptoms can be mispreserved or clumsiness. Although scoliosis can be seen in 30% of the patients, and evaluation for the identification of the symptom, magnetic resonance imaging is performed, the modality to categorize the intramedullary spinal cord tumor. For further treatment planning, an MRI can show the size, location, length, extent of the surrounding edema, and the presence of the cord tumor interface and the associated cyst or the syringomyelia. Although each of the three common types of the intramedullary spinal cord tumor has a particularly T1, T2, and contrast-enhanced T1 weighted image pattern, differentiating between them based on the imaging alone remain difficult. So both ependymoma and astrocytoma span multiple vertebral segments enhanced with contrast and are hypo or iso-intense on T1 weighted and are hyper-intense on the T2 weighted image. So the ependymomas often are located centrally within the spinal cord, leading to the symmetric expansion and occupy the whole width of the cord and enhance diffusely with a well-defined border. And the astrocytoma tend to be positioned more eccentrically, can be non-enhancing or have an enhancing nodule or the large, we can say, satellite cyst, and usually do not have a well-defined border. And intratumoral hemorrhage can be seen in both types but are more common in ependymomas. Hemangioblastomas have the homogeneous contrast enhancement compared to the more heterogeneous pattern found in the astrocytoma or ependymoma, and they also have a mural nodule, are associated with syringomyelia, and can have significant surrounding edema. As they are highly vascularized tumor, spinal angiography is helpful to categorize feeding vessel and associated dilated PL vein from the vascular shunting, and can help in consideration for preoperative embolization. Treatment management, definitely surgical resection should be performed as soon as possible following the diagnosis of intramedullary spinal cord tumor. Outcome relate with the preoperative neurological condition, and observation can lead to further neurological deficit, and some of which are the irreversible. And the goal of the surgical resection are to obtain tissue diagnosis, maximize tumor resection, and improve neurological function. Intraoperative somatosensory and motor evoke potential are used to monitor for changes in the neurological function and help guide resection. The extent of the total resection is generally depend on the presence of the clear plane between the tumor and the normal spinal cord tissue, and the astrocytoma are infiltrative, non-encapsulated tumor that are challenging to resect. And for low-grade astrocytoma, if a plane can be developed between the tumor and the spinal cord, gross total resection is an option. However, for high-grade astrocytoma or low-grade astrocytoma with no definable plane for the resection, biopsy plus limited resection is recommended. Aggressive resection can lead to significant neurological deficit, and the post-operative radiotherapy can be used for the high-grade astrocytoma. So the ependymoma are the benign with the distinct tumor and the normal spinal cord interface, and we can say the making cross total resection an option for cure, and the rate of the recurrence is depend upon the extent of the tumor resection with the presence of the discrete surgical plane, and the gross total resection is reported in more than 90% of cases of ependymomas. Similarly, hemangioblastoma also can be resected circumferentially, and the preoperative embolization can attenuate their rich vascular supply, so the complete excision is possible in 83% to 92% of the patient, with clinical improvement noted following resection. Generally, for intramedullary spinal cord tumor, better long-term outcome are seen in patients with the less preoperative deficit, and recurrence depend upon the extent of the resection and tumor histology. And the adjuvant therapy include the radiotherapy and the chemotherapy are often reserved for the tumor recurrence, and the high-grade lesion are even there a contraindication for the resection. So further research note novel treatment and the strategy are needed to improve the outcome, and especially for the astrocytoma and surgical resection. Prognosis: the outcome of the patient with the intramedullary spinal cord tumor are guarded, because those are the neurological deficit are the presentation have the worst outcome, but the patient with the metastatic disease rarely live beyond 12 months. But the complication like the paralysis and the complication related to the bedridden status, deep venous thrombosis, bad sore, atelectasis, local spread of the lesion, death are there. But deterrence here, we can say patient should be adequately counseled regarding the prognosis of the disease, and expected neurological functional outcome should know, and the whole team should involve in this thing. I hope I try to explain a little bit about this case. I hope you will like it. If you like it, please subscribe, support, and share it. I hope you will support me. Thank you.